Have you ever worked for a boss or under a department head that's just never satisfied? No matter what you do, they always want more. And even if you do exactly what they asked, it's just never enough. It's horrible, isn't it? Or have you ever found yourself in a place where you try to please two different people that want different things? Let me put it practically. Have you ever struggled between your health and your cravings? You know you like what you crave, but you also know you've got to look after your health. You can't go both ways. You've got to make a decision, right? We get a bit of that when Jesus talks to his disciples in the Sermon on the Mount about money. And today, in our Kingsway podcast, we're going to ask ourselves, how can we do life in the context of money the King's way, his way? This is what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 from verse 19. Jesus says to his disciples this. The first thing he addresses, he says, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. The first thing Jesus goes to is this, that everything that you gather, if you store up for yourself things that is perishable. Now let's just pause there. Just about everything is, isn't it? It's either going to rot or it's going to be destroyed. Whatever you gather will go again. Practically, that new car of yours will be old very soon. The stuff that you value today will be tomorrow's trash. That's as simple as it is. And even if it's stuff that you keep for a long time or wealth that you gather, somebody else is going to own it soon, and maybe sooner than you think. Jesus says, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where it can be destroyed and it's just temporary. And then the warning is this. He says, store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. You see, there's two different ways and two different treasures he's talking about. Jesus is saying you can either be busy with, store up, gather things that is temporary, or you can gather, store up, and work on treasures that is eternal in its nature. Now that sounds funny, but think about it. The things in your life that is eternal. It's definitely not our cars and our money and the things we gather. The things that are eternal in its nature is the relationships around us, our children, our wives, how we do, what we do with our lives. We, I, you, we're eternal beings. Our wives, our children, they're eternal beings. The people that we do life with, that's the stuff that he says we should invest in. We should gather and store up in heaven. Gather those treasures there. And then he warns us. He says, because if you gather treasures on earth, where it can be stolen, where it can be destroyed, he said your heart will follow. Now, very often we get this wrong. We actually think that where our hearts are, there our treasure will follow. But Jesus says, no, if you keep gathering things around you, temporary things, more and more and more and more. And by the way, it's like a boss that is never satisfied. It's never enough. No matter how much you gather, you'll always want to and have the desire to gather more. It will never be pleased. So as we gather and gather, our hearts will follow our treasure. Jesus warns us and says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let me put it practically. When you had nothing, every single thing you got or that came your way, you were very grateful for. Because you didn't really have anything to lose. You were bold in your steps, either be it business or your work or even with your family life. But the more we gather, later the treasures that we gather and that we gathered with the right intentions owns our hearts. They determine for us how we make our decisions and where we spend our time. So this is what Jesus is saying. Be careful where you gather your treasure because your heart will follow that. And then Jesus says a very interesting thing. He says, because your eye is the lamp of the body, and your eye is light. But if your eye becomes dark, then the whole body will be dark. Jesus is saying not just should we be careful for our hearts, but he also warns us about our eyes. Let me ask you practically, what are you aiming at? Where's your eyes? Is our eyes on the eternal things in our lives? Our wives, our children, our relationships, our relationship with God and the people around us. Is that where we focus? Or is our eyes always focusing on the natural? What I don't have, what I want next. What car am I looking to buy? What position am I aiming at in my work environment? My career opportunities? Where my eyes are at, if my eyes are full of light, the light that God brings, the revelation he brings about what really matters, then my whole body will be full of light. Everything I do will follow what I see. And if I see the right things and look on the right things and focus on the right things that are light and eternal in its nature, then everything I do will follow that. But if my eyes are darkened by greed and worry and the fact that I can never get enough of what I want, later on everything goes. Even those things that are eternal suffer at the hands of the things that are temporary. So Jesus warns us about our hearts following where we gather our treasure. He also warns us about making sure that our eyes stay full of light, the revelation and the wisdom of God, the insight of God, not just the things of this world. And then Jesus sums it up with this. He says the reason for this is you cannot serve two masters. Remember I asked you in the beginning, have you ever struggled with your health and your cravings? You can't serve both. Now this is a much greater example of that. You see, you will either find yourself serving mammon, as Jesus calls it, or the love of money, or him. But let me be clear. Remember, this is a podcast about doing things the King's way. It's not about my opinion or your opinion. Jesus warns us in his words that we've got to be careful because we will not be able to serve two masters. I want to repeat this. In Jesus' words, he says, for you will either hate one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. The very last sentence of Jesus' teaching here says this: you cannot serve both God and money. This is not my opinion or my way. This is also might not be your way, but this is our King's way. And because he loves us, because he's a good king, he warns us, do not try to serve two masters. You will either love one and despise the other, or devote yourself to one and neglect the other. Money is not a good king. Let me show you something. You're going to live your life one of two ways when it comes to money and God. You're going to either live your life and trying to serve money, the love of money, your wallet, your treasures, by asking your God to serve your wallet, or you're going to make your wallet, money, whatever God has provided for you, serve your God. It's either one or the other. Now let me be clear. Money makes a brilliant servant. If you love God with all your heart and you pursue the things that matters to him, money will actually be a good servant in you serving him. And let me also be clear. Money makes a horrible master. A master that does not care about you. A master that is never satisfied. I'll end with this. In the context of money, the love of money, the desire for wealth, if you want to live your life the King's way, be sure to serve only one master, only one king, our Lord Jesus Christ. Do not find yourself a slave for either money or the love thereof. Let's live our lives the King's way.